Join Gator great Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
All right, here we go. It is a Monday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning. I am Terry Norvelle. Shane out on business. He will be back, I do believe, tomorrow. So we're going to have some fun here on a Monday, looking back on the weekend that was and ahead. A lot going on, a lot of sports overlapping. Of course, joined by JC, my main man.
Eric,
A little damp and rainy there in Gainesville and in Jacksonville, where I'm at.
yeah, it probably need a little bit of it. I'm just trying to sit here and figure out what my over-under number will be on how many attorney commercials I see today. Of all the lucky people that won hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars, I put it around 11.5. I woke up this morning, tuned in, got ready for the show, and I already saw 3. So I've only got to get to about 8 more, and I'm sure that'll be done by noon. So I'm doing well, man. Good weekend this past weekend, Florida basketball. Who's it going to be this time? We've got 10 deep, and now you bring in Ruben Chignello that comes in with a double-double. Ruben Chignello, that's exactly who we had that would lead us through LSU's treacherous Baton Rouge road trip. And I was happy to see the depth. They fall behind and then they come roaring back after a big lead.
Fun basketball team. I mean, I know that's an understatement. Yeah. What a fun team. They're deep. They seem to enjoy playing ball with each other.
Yeah.
And Todd Golden, not that he was ever a bad game day coach, he seems to be growing up right in front of our eyes. I mean, he really seems to manage games well. He's got a good feel. I think he's got there's a rapport you can have with officiating crews. You don't want to get on them too much, but you want to get on them, but you want to be taken serious. I think Todd Golden, his game day management, and obviously putting this team together and putting his staff together, I think we're seeing this guy grow right in front of our eyes into a big-time coach.
And it's great to have the depth. He's got the luxury of having depth. He's got the luxury of now becoming somebody who is respected in terms of wins and losses because he's racking up the wins, man. Look at his 2-year record up to this point. He is racking up a lot of wins, and he's got players coming in from places like FAU to help out this team and give it more depth. He's got the people's attention, let's say. And Florida at number 2 in the country, who knows? I mean, Auburn struggled this weekend with Arkansas. They struggled before that with another team. It wouldn't surprise me in a week or so, Terry, if we saw Florida ranked number 1 in the country soon.
I'm glad you went there. With a program like Florida, certainly there's tradition. There are a couple of national championships. There are about 5 Final Four. So this is a program with some tradition. Basketball blue blood, though, by any means.
Right.
What do you have? Things like game day coming to Gainesville. That's a big deal for this program.
Huge.
Florida sitting at number 2, maybe getting to number 1. And I know there's a tournament, JC, and it all gets decided on the court. But a program like Florida, if you get to number 1, there's some panache there. And this program needs panache. I think game day is officially coming, right? This Saturday, right? Game day will be in Gainesville.
I just, it's funny because when I've watched basketball in the past, they've always had some sort of an ACC or East Coast bias to the north and along the Eastern Coast. And when you get guys like Jay Billis and even maybe Dick Vitale or somebody who's been, these guys who call these games, what's his name? Bill Raftery,
yeah.
Like that, talking about your program, you are beginning to become noticed. And I'm not saying Florida, nobody knows what Florida is or who they are. But what I am saying is that we don't get as much conversation about Villanova and we don't hear about the Tar Heels as often anymore. Now we always seem to hear about Duke, but Florida and Duke and perhaps Houston to me right now are playing the best basketball in the country. Not that today means that it's going to define the season. It's going to be defined in March, of course. But this is a great time because we're about to get into March, and they seem to be they fall behind. And what I loved about it is that LSU was a trap. It could have been a trap. They were playing better basketball. They get in there, they establish themselves, take the lead, and then they just kind of fall asleep. And then they wake up again. And that's the old Gators would have lost that game to LSU on Saturday and just got buried. And then we all would have said, well, it was a road game, and blah, blah, blah. But they answered and won by double digits. I'm just impressed with a little adversity showing up and the answer to that adversity. That's what I'm.
I get it. LSU's at the bottom of the conference.
They are,
I get that. But JC, during that 22-2 run or whatever it was, LSU was on. Yeah, I literally never thought Florida was going to lose the game. I know that sounds crazy. It was in the first half. This team is so mature, and they never seem to get flustered. They just keep playing. JC, I know this was about a week or so ago. I made a proclamation on my show with Patrick Young, and I'm going to stand by it.
Okay.
I've seen everybody. You've seen everybody this year. I've seen Auburn a bunch. I've seen Florida a bunch. I've seen Alabama a bunch. Houston, Duke, Iowa State. I'll say it right now. On a neutral court, I think Florida's the best team in the country. On a neutral court. And keep in mind, in March Madness, you don't have to go to Cameron Indoor. You don't have to go to Neville. Those are neutral courts. I think they are the best team in the country. And that's not just Terry blowing Gator smoke.
Yeah, it'd be hard to argue with that. I mean, let's face it. They've won 20. How many games? 20. It's been
3-3.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very gaudy record, and 24-3 right now. And I talked to a former Gator football player over the weekend. I was going to dinner. I saw him out. We had a chat, and he's thinking that the only thing that concerns him right now is when we get to the NCAA tournament, how certain games are called. He was talking to some people,
I agree.
And he was talking about how certain games are officiated. And in these tournament settings, it's so different than going to a rah-rah barn, on a Wednesday night when people are going bananas, and the energy levels in some of these first and second round games can be really sketchy if you're not close to maybe something that's more comfortable for you if you have to go far out. But Florida won't. If they get a number one seed in the West, they will have their hopeful first two games in Raleigh, North Carolina. So, what I think is important is that the seeding is important, the bracketing, of course, but Florida can beat anybody, just like you said. But certain things, these intangibles have to take place that give Florida some sort of an edge, I would think, in order to kind of cruise through. You're going to be challenged during these tournament games, but to get to the Sweet 16 and cruise through and not have the officials slow the tempo of the games down, I just hope doesn't happen. And he was just bringing it up. I didn't even think about that, but we'll see.
Yeah, Florida doesn't. He wants to catch a slow whistle crew, a crew that Florida's so deep and big. He wants a crew to let you fight. They want a quick whistle crew. That's blowing whistles every second.
That would not be. Well,
they want to let you brawl a little bit. Florida's the Gators are so damn deep. Yeah, I think it comes down to looking at a bigger picture. You're hearing those national guys. You referenced Bill Raftery and Jay Bill, the national guys, right? That really know and have. Now, I do agree they lean Northeast a lot and Midwest and Blue Bloods, but enough of the big boys now have said it. If the SEC,
it's incredible,
wins the March Madness, if it be at Florida, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, A&M, so if the SEC wins the national championship in men's basketball this year, this literally goes down as the greatest conference in the history of college basketball this year. I mean, what's going on in the SEC? And you saw it coming a mile away. It is a meat grinder of a conference.
It's unbelievable the winning percentages these teams have, and to get maybe 12 or 13 teams in this tournament is unprecedented, Terry. It's unprecedented, and I think some of these middle, the Tennessees and the Texas A&Ms, let them get hot, and they can write their own path if they get hot.
Missouri, I think on the right night, Missouri can beat anybody.
On the right night, they
should, man.
Isn't it great though? You go and beat Alabama by 15 points. You score 110 points, and of course, a lot of that has to do with the style of play in that game. And then you go to Arkansas and they out-athlete you in the second half. And this is a bubble team,
Yeah.
This is a bubble team. I lost.
Yeah.
I had Missouri -1.5. I took my lumps there. I got beat on that one because I thought they could continue that momentum. And I just didn't think Arkansas had it. But when Arkansas gets going in the second half like they did at their place at Bud Walton, my God, I said, why is this team a bubble team? This team looks like a legit threat to go into the tournament, and they are a bubble team. But that was a huge win for Arkansas.
That was a big win. That was a real big win for Arkansas. They needed that. They needed that resume win. I think who had an ugly loss over the weekend was Texas. Texas goes out and gives South Carolina their first win. Well, that hurt. Texas is trying to get that final spot. That hurt the Longhorns.
What was that? I mean, what a pathetic effort. And you really got to ask yourself, who's running this program? 69 points. South Carolina beats them 84-69. How many wins does South Carolina have in the SEC, Terry? I don't think it's many. And exactly. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. And, I think we also saw, here's another example. Mississippi State wins 2 games last week. They're feeling better about themselves. They got Josh Hubbard dealing it up from the outside. They go and just take an L at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's not going to make the tournament, all likelihood, although that kind of win can get them back into it. So Tennessee, they go on the road to Texas A&M. It just tells you, it just speaks to your point about the meat grinding nature of this freaking conference. When you can play at home, you think, I got a big home court advantage. And in most cases, you do. Oklahoma, South Carolina, you saw Vanderbilt. But then all of a sudden, you can lose a game. Tennessee comes into Texas A&M and takes them down. Florida goes into LSU, no problem. So I don't know. I just think that this conference is really amazing. And I think it's mostly because of the coaching in this league. I think the league
Let's keep it here for a few more minutes before we take our first break. By the way, Gary Norvelle sitting in for Shane Matthews. Of course, JC co-hosting the show, as always, staying on some business today. Getting back to the number 1 seeds, obviously Florida is really fighting for one of the number 1 seeds. I also think there's great value if you can be the number 1 of the number 1. Because the one of one, if it's Auburn or Florida, I think they get put in a bracket where the Elite Eight goes through Atlanta. And if you would love to swing through Atlanta trying to get to the Final Four. I mean, that is a big deal for and I think the SEC regular season winner is going to get that.
Well, and Auburn's looking pretty solid there. And if they get to go through Atlanta, that gives Auburn some fans. It gives them.
Yeah, they'll probably, if they went, JC, I think they would go Lexington, Atlanta, and any SEC school would love that. Lexington, Atlanta, I think that's the bracket. But Atlanta is definitely one of the regional final sites. And hell, it's the headquarters of the SEC, right?
Yeah. Well, Terry, let me ask you this. You're a Jacksonville guy. You do your show in the beautiful city of Jacksonville. I'm a Jaguar season ticket holder, by the way. And you're a guy that's been watching this for decades. What does it feel like to me? Does it feel like to you? Because it feels like to me that the state of Florida, I don't know what's the presence in college basketball for these NCAA games to ever come down to the state of Florida? Does it ever come down? I remember one year they had it at the Vet over there in Jacksonville. They've had it twice. They've had it twice. Okay. So what does it take to get games in Florida? Does the NCAA bring games to Florida? Does it feel like to you that they ignore Florida? What's the story there? Do you have a feeling on that?
Number one, the arena downtown Jacksonville is now really too antiquated. It's over 20 years old now, and it's small by standards. It's got some big now. The Final Fours, you have to be in a dome stadium now. I mean, there's no more Final Fours going to Rupp Arena.
Right.
Or and they used to with 20,000 seats. You have to be, and also the first and second round games, that stadium down there, the arena here in town, you could pack about 14,000 open. Yeah. Well, you better have nearly 20,000 these places are hosting now. Down in Tampa host.
Okay.
And, they're going to put some lipstick on a pig, I think, after the football stadium is built. But yeah, I think that unfortunately, I think the arena is kind of it's sized itself out a little bit because these things are. You realize the Final Fours now pack 40 and 50,000 in. And think about it, the Final Four is in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio this year.
Yeah, well,
be domes, man.
When we get the stadium in Jacksonville, thank God we're getting that, and I'm really thrilled about it. Yeah, the Jaguars want you to buy 25 season tickets for priority to that, by the way. So just in case you're thinking about it, folks. But that stadium, will it be able to hold a Final Four? Would that be enclosed?
No, it'll be open air.
Oh, well, then they can't do that. They can't.
Yeah, they're not. They're putting like some type of tarp on it, kind of a sun shield kind of thing.
No, I mean when it's done, Terry. I'm saying in 28, 29, and 30, would they be able to hope? Is that stadium going to be built or constructed to the extent that they can have indoor? I mean,
Are you referring to the football stadium?
The new one, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not going to have a permanent roof, so you can't play basketball.
So but they can do it in Tampa because that Rays ballpark is going to be a full. Okay, so they can do it.
And it is a bigger. They don't have the Final Four there.
No, but Tampa could host the Final Four when the Rays stadium is finished. Is that correct?
Yeah, if it's a dome big enough, absolutely.
It will be. No, the new one is going to be
absolutely.
Okay, so they could do that. All right. I'd love to see basketball in Florida come. That's all.
And as we go to our first break here on PodUp with Matthews in the morning, you asked a minute ago, it would also help. And I know Miami went to a Final Four a couple of years ago. That was a fluke. That was an absolute fluke.
Yeah, it was.
Florida State's danced with it a little bit, but they're rebuilding. It would help if somebody else in the state helped Florida. Florida's got 2 titles, 5 Final Fours, a million Elite Eights. Nobody else is kind of,
I know. Get going, guys. Well, I already said that Florida State should be sued for malpractice in athletics. Just the fact that they're suing the ACC is a joke. The ACC should be suing them. But for how pathetic their program has become in football, and it has, and to deny that is not. Listen, you can have that 1 year, you can. They did, but they can't validate it. That's what you make a birdie on hole number 8. You better try to par at least number 9 to get that validation birdie. So, Lee Minson wants me to ask you, T-Mac. T-Mac, will there be a corn dog and T-Mac college football show coming in the fall to North Central Florida Airways on Saturday morning? Are you kidding me? You think I get up at 7:00 in the morning and talk about college football with a clear head? I can do it though, Lee. I can do it. But T-Mac,
by the way,
they love
you. By the way, in case our viewers, I know some of the viewers, I know you, JC, were like me. You just me woke up this morning, speaking of college football, woke up this morning and said, wonder how many days before the kickoff of college football? 181, in case you're wondering, but who's counting?
That's that a boy. That a boy. You can never, ever, ever be out of season in college football. I don't care what he said. I can talk about that all the time. And, I just want to make sure that, we don't cancel the spring game yet. I don't want to do that yet. I know Texas has done it, and I don't really go to these games, but I know how much it matters to the folks in little old Gainesville. In places like Columbus, Ohio, maybe, and Austin, Texas, these big metropolitan cities, I think maybe the fans, they love it, but there's a lot of other things to do. In little old Gainesville, you got to have that, man. You got to have that.
Hey, how about this? Instead of canceling college football spring games, why don't we cancel the WNBA?
I couldn't tell you right now, Terry, this is true. And I'm not trying to be a smartass about it, but I couldn't tell you 5 at WNBA teams or 5 players. I know who Caitlin Clark is, and I know who the girl is that hates Caitlin Clark.
Angel Reese.
That's her, yeah. And you can have the rest of them. I'm sorry. I hope I don't want to offend our female viewers, but I don't even think they like watching it, to tell you the truth.
No. All right, let's
we got that out of there.
I want to come back and continue some SEC and Gator basketball talk. A lot of
baseball sweat too.
Your thoughts on the Jaguars did with their entire coaching staff. It's a little risky. It's a little cutting edge. We'll talk about that on the other side. Up on a Monday edition. I'm Terry Norvelle in for Shane Matthews. It is PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union,
International Diamond Center,
Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila, Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Signs, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, Nest and Wow, MG&A Wealth Management. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook and YouTube. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. To become a sponsor, call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Make plans for Thursday, February 27th to be at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill to raise a glass to our Elijah Craig Single Barrel Launch Party. Be a part of an exclusive evening as we unveil our 9-year-old uncut Elijah Craig Single Barrel. Only bottled at 121.1 proof. Enjoy indulgent bourbon-inspired bites served in a casual mingle-style setting with a Spurrier's twist. Your ticket includes one exclusive bottle of Spurrier's Elijah Craig Single Barrel, signed by Steve Spurrier himself.
It's going to be a great night. Get your tickets at spurriers.com.
Unleash the Inferno.
What's up, everyone? I'm Mike Pouncey, and this is my twin brother Marquise Pouncey, and this is Life After Football.
Let's go.
We are the owners of Tropical Distillery, and JF Hayden's is our liqueur brand. We have 5 different flavors: a mango, a lychee, an espresso, citrus, and key lime pie. We pride ourselves on not only being a Florida-made brand, but also a cocktail solution. With that being said, cheers and go Gators.
Back on a rainy Monday, Terry Norvelle sitting in for Shane Matthews, and happy to do it. I've enjoyed this show as a viewer for a number of years. Obviously, you're hooked up with PodUp with Matthews in the morning. Again, Shane out, JC holding things down. I'm just kind of helping drive a little bit. JC wanted to jump back into SEC Gator basketball. And there are 4 games left. Everybody's got 4 conference games left. Obviously, Auburn, Florida, Alabama are really fighting it out. Who's going to win the conference regular season championship, which I think is way more valuable than Nashville. We'll get to Nashville in a moment. Auburn, 14-1 conference play. Their midweek is Wednesday against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Their Saturday coming up is at Kentucky. Auburn's next and final midweek will be at A&M, and then they wrap up the final Saturday with Bama.
There could be 2 losses there. There could be 2 losses.
Could be. Florida's got Georgia tomorrow, A&M Saturday with a big deal going on in Gainesville. At Bama on that following Wednesday, and they close with Ole Miss. Bama's got the toughest: Mississippi State, at Tennessee, Florida, and Auburn. That is tough. Don't forget this, though, JC.
Okay.
Florida, 11-3, conference losses.
Right.
Auburn, 1 conference loss. But it's not as dire as you think, because Florida doesn't need to win a game over Auburn. If they tie them, they've got the tiebreaker. They play once this year.
Well,
they only need to tie them.
I see Auburn easily potentially losing 2 games out of those last 4, only because they have to play at A&M, at Kentucky.
Yeah.
And don't they play Alabama? Did you say they play Alabama?
Yeah, they close with Alabama.
I mean, who knows, right? That's going to be in Auburn, so they'll have an advantage there. And they did beat Alabama last time. Does not mean anything going to the next game. So, I can see that happening. But Florida's got to just handle their business, take care of their responsibility, and just keep it rolling. I don't know the prognosis that I should. I'm sure we've got some guys like Scott Carter or Chris Harry who can tell us what the story on Condon's going to be. I'd like to see him get fully healthy, though, before tournament time.
Yeah.
Don't come back too soon.
He dressed the other night, which means he probably went through warm-ups, so I didn't play, but he dressed. That's huge. When he had the boot on, he was bouncing around on the sideline, so you can believe he's pretty close. Play. By the way, tomorrow in Athens, Georgia's playing for their season. This is final ranked. Georgia needs 1 big win. This is the final ranked team they play the rest of the way. It's Florida. The Gators roll in. playing for their season tomorrow. And that Mike White, I always liked Mike White. I've never thought he's much of a game day coach, strategist, or anything like that. But he was normally good for one upset somewhere a year.
Yeah, he can pull it. He can pull it off. But my God, what a difference! Polar opposites in offensive style and excitement. And I always yelled at Shane for sticking up for the guy, and the fans were just like, "Get this guy out of here!" Shane, you always say, "Oh no, he's going to do fine. He's going to do fine. He's a great recruiter." All this. Man, I celebrated when they let him go. I mean, when he left, I was just like, thank God.
He's Mike White, JC. Mike White.
Boring. It's awful.
I've said this for years. In all sports, some guys are designated to be head coaches, and some guys should be assistant coaches. Mike White's a good basketball man. Mike White needs to be sitting in the number 2 chair on a major program as the number 2 guy. The guy that kind of keeps his head coach, he's the number 2 guy.
Yeah,
he's not a head coach. At a power.
Yeah, and somebody was telling me when Ole Miss was choking up everything, and Chris Beard this and Chris Beard that, that maybe Mike White would go back to Ole Miss. Why would they want him? I know, because he played basketball there. So what? There's a lot of guys that played basketball at Ole Miss that you don't want to be your coach. Yeah. I think Beard's a good coach, but my goodness, Ole Miss has really kind of hit the skids here lately. So, this league is just, it will do that to you. It's a survival type of situation for some of these mid-tier teams. But for the Floridas and the Auburns and the Alabamas, they made Kentucky look like just another kind of team. I mean, it's just, there is a top level of, and I'm now putting Tennessee back up there in the top.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm fine with that.
But then right below that, you got A&M, Kentucky, and I guess Mississippi. I don't know. I mean, Vanderbilt kind of toyed with them a little bit. So it's a tough league. It's incredible how good it is. I attribute that to the coaching and the ability of these guys to get players down here. And I think the rest of the country is on notice that we're going to have 11 to 13 teams in the big dance. And I would be shocked if half those teams don't make it to the Sweet 16. But
I've said for the last several weeks, mathematically, when this thing starts on March 20th or whatever it is.
20th, Thursday, March 20th. Well, they have those playing games earlier. Thursday is when I really get going.
When you get the field set, and when you get 11, 12, 13, you may get 12, 13 teams from one conference, the SEC.
Yeah.
When you get them in there, and like you just said, the majority of these are good basketball teams, meaning they're going to win their first couple of games. So, JC, you have guessing 2 or 3 situations just mathematically where you have SEC knocking out SEC, because you're going to get to the point after week 1, you may still have 9 teams left, 9 of 32. You can't touch each other. You're going to end up playing each other.
Well, do you think
each other out?
Do you think the diehards? Well, if they're all high seeds, though, they won't play each other in the Sweet 16. So, do you think the diehards out there are just cringing over the idea that there could be 2 or 3 number 1 seeds coming out of this league, and maybe as many number 2s?
I think they are.
Ones won't play the 2s until the very end. So just keep that on. If they win out, they won't.
You wonder if you're Commissioner Sankey, you're sitting here going, the conference tournament's around the corner in Nashville, but if you're Auburn, Florida, Alabama, especially those 3, man, you're going to get a double bye. It looks like you play Friday. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if you go 1-1 and leave town on Saturday. I mean, I think the big committee has gotten so good at what they do. They understand that the gold was found in the regular season. And I think the Floridas, the Auburns, it's a lot like what happens in baseball, in the SEC baseball tournament. You have the big boys go out to the Hoover. They don't really want to be there 5-6 days.
No.
They'd rather scrimmage here and there and quote unquote lose a game and get the hell out of Dodge.
So let me go a different direction here with you. Let me see if you agree with this. So you just made a point about attrition. Let's call it that. And so Sankey and Tony Petitti spend tens of thousands of dollars to do something they could have done over a phone call and start talking about the playoffs. Okay, so they start talking about seedings. All right, then they decide, at some point after the next year when the contract expires, are we going to go to 16? I know they talked about expanding the team. All right, expansion. So when it comes to expansion, is there a chance that we're going to have these conference tournament games like the SEC championship game, which makes a lot of money? It's really great. If we have 4 SEC football teams locked into the playoff, and I'm going way past where I should probably go because I know we still have another year, but this is coming, just like the 12-team playoff was coming. We knew it.
Yeah.
What does the meaning of the SEC championship football game take place if we know that 4 teams out of this league are going to be playing in the real tournament? And so those are things you got to think about is these leaders take these big decisions under their belt and they try to decide how we're going to spend our December and our January. Because I know it's Christmas, but Christmas came early in November, and then Christmas comes because of all the football in December. And it was a great time, right? To be in America at football, college football.
I think, JC, that's one of the major sticking points these commissioners are wrestling with is, my God, Big Ten championship game, SEC, even Big 12. That's just printing money. But now they're playing so many games. And do you want an appearance in your championship game to end up being potentially a negative for you? You don't want wrestling with that hard. I don't know what the answer is, but they're definitely wrestling with that hard.
The Big Ten championship game, I think the walk-in price was about $10 for a ticket. The ACC championship game, they were giving away tickets to that game. Okay, and Clemson was playing in it. That's the only team that can bring people to it for the most part. So in a horrific league. So I just think that there's going to be some wholesale change. All I guess I'm trying to say is that we're going to see everything really continue to evolve and change, whatever the vision is that these guys have. And the 2 biggest voices are from Indianapolis and Birmingham.
Why don't they go ahead and rename those 2 conferences the Big Ten AFC and the SEC NFC, and just mirror what they do in the NFL. Give me the Big 24, the Big 32 on each side.
Seems like it's coming.
Just go ahead. JC, want to get your thoughts. The Jaguars now have everybody in place now. They finally got their head coach a couple weeks ago. Liam Cohen comes over. They named their general manager James Gladstone. I guess it was Friday. A unique situation going on in Jacksonville. The NFL in terms of hiring head coaches, it's not too uncommon to go very young. The NFL's gotten very young. The head coach. Well, Jacksonville, they've taken it a step, and it's a little risky, but do you realize Liam Cohen, head coach, never been a head coach, 39 years old.
There you go.
His offensive coordinator, and he'll kind of be his own offensive coordinator, but he named a guy by the name of Ubinski.
So he's like the Russ Callaway of the Jaguars. Okay.
Yeah, this guy's never been an offensive coordinator, 29 years old.
Yeah.
His defensive coordinator, Campanelli, never been the head defensive coordinator, 42 years old. Okay. Don't forget, the head coach has never been a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Pacelli gets an executive position. Tony, I like Tony, known him a long time. 52 years old, but he's a rookie executive, never been in that position.
Yeah.
It's when you do things unconventional, if it works, it's called cutting edge. Boy, it's risky. I mean, there's a lot of youth and inexperience on that staff. Man, it's risky.
It is, and they've got a couple of seasons of transition here with the stadium. So. But I'm telling you, folks, just be patient if you love the Jaguars, because when this new building comes, the whole area is going to change. That downtown area, everything is going to be so different. If you can just stomach the next 2-3 years, and they just got to be patient. Relatability is important too. I want these young guys to be able to relate to these kids they draft nowadays. And I need these players to want to come to Jacksonville, to know what's coming in the future, to know how exciting this area is going to create an environment for Jaguar football. But the biggest thing, there's 2 things. You have to score and you have to win games. The Jags couldn't score last year, and the Jags couldn't win games. And I don't care if the guy's 106 or if he's 14. Coach the team to get the ball in the end zone and win football games. That's all I care about. And Trevor has got to start to come around. All right, we've given him how many years is it now, Terry? 4? Is he going into his 4th year?
He'll be going in his 5th year.
5th year? Okay. I mean, it's time to either, you know what, or get off the pot.
Or get off the pot, yeah.
Yeah, but they gave him the money. So he's already been paid. So that's who you're stuck with. That's who you got. And let's just hope this Liam Cohn can reach him. I thought Doug Peterson and he had a good thing going. And I still say if ETN doesn't fumble the ball through the Miami Dolphin end zone and they go 1-0 because they dominated that football game for 3 quarters, they dominated, then that season last year changes. I don't know why I think one game could have changed it all because they played so many close games they could have and maybe should have won. But you get that first win down in Miami, and I think the season could have been.
And you know, a byproduct of the failure last year, Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson just went at it. They just weren't on the same page. They didn't have the same philosophy. And then they got throwing barbs at each other through the media. Under, like, you had to read between the lines. You know, it was one of these. Well, you know, we're not producing, but you know. One guy was blaming one guy about personnel. One guy's blaming one guy about play calling, and it got messy. Yeah, JC, let's keep it here. People just tuning in. Let's go ahead and take it to the end of the show. I think Zach said we could do that. Terry Norvelle here in for Shane Matthews. Of course, JC on the call helping me out on a rainy Monday. A couple things I want to hit real quick. You probably can hear about this. It's not uncommon, I don't think, for Alabama athletics and Ohio State athletics. They butted heads. They're kind of alpha dogs. Did you hear? They got into it in baseball here in Jacksonville yesterday.
No,
did you hear?
I did not hear this. What happened?
There's been last couple of years. There's been one of these college baseball tournaments. They'll bring 4 or 5 teams in. A couple of northern teams because of the cold. Well, Ohio State comes down, and you know it's kind of a round robin. You play like 3 games over 3 days. NC State, Bama, Ohio State. So Alabama and Ohio State hook up yesterday in baseball in the baseball grounds. And Ohio State's up 10-0. Alabama rallies and wins 12-10 on, I think, a walk-off. I wasn't at the game, but obviously it must have got pretty hot, right? So, and I'm assuming it got hot on the field. Bama walks them off, coming back. Biggest comeback in Alabama baseball history.
Right.
Must have been bad blood. So Alabama, in the locker room, 20 players are shooting birds. And they put it on Instagram like with the caption "F the O."
Oh boy! Well,
I just wanted to get that. Start up in baseball now.
Yeah, well, you know, baseball's great. And by the way, down here, just another ho-hum sweep, playing some team from Ohio, another team from Ohio. Yeah, they have to play in the South during this time of year. Of course they do. But Gator baseball and the SEC, I expect to be just as brutal as it always is in terms of competitive nature of it, just like maybe even in the softball. And Florida, 6-0 right now, and that's what you would expect. Everybody last year was so worried about midweek games. We'll see if it changes this year and how it goes. But no, I did not see Alabama and Ohio State get after each other in baseball. I do find it interesting. I have a very good friend who's an Ohio State guy in Tallahassee, so I'll have to remind him that they lost a 10-run lead yesterday. So thank you for that information.
Speaking of today, historic day, this date in sports history, just want to get this out and ask you, when I describe what happened on this date in 1980, JC, could this have been, if this outcome went the other way, this might have been the biggest buzzkill in the history of sports. Do you realize this date, 1980, the U.S. hockey team finished off the gold medal run, the great Do You Believe in Miracles?
Yes.
This date in 1980, they beat Finland 4-2 to win the gold.
That's right.
Remember, they beat the Russians in the semifinal game.
That's what people forget.
JC,
that's
what
right.
would have happened? How big of a buzzkill if the Americans didn't win the next game?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what folks, they seem to, I know a lot of folks who think that the game against Russia or the Soviet Union was for the big medal. It was actually against Finland the next game. But they didn't have that letdown, and they carried through, and that's the game that doesn't get talked about as often as, of course, a miracle on ice. We had last week something equivalent to a playoff game in hockey. It was the only professional league that did their mid-season break the right way, it feels like to me, because of all the excitement that surrounded it. And, once Canada won, they acted like complete horses' asses because it's almost as if they had never won anything before. And get ready, they haven't won a Stanley Cup since the Canadians in the early 90s, I think, or late 80s even. So they really haven't won anything, and they have forgotten how to win up in Canada. And they acted like complete idiots, starting with their prime minister, who is a complete idiot. Having said that, though, I was proud of the American team. They were battling through injuries. They outshot the Canadians, could have easily won the game. It was an overtime sudden death situation. It's a coin flip at that point, and Canada had Connor McDavid all alone in front of the net. Okay, great. They win. But you know what? I will bet anything right now that no Canadian team is going to win the Stanley Cup just because. I mean, Edmonton is the favorite right now. They're favorite. But I will bet the field. Give me the field. You can have the Oilers.
All right, I go. We've got about 10 minutes left here on the Monday edition. Terry Norvelle in for Shane Matthews, of course. JC holding things down. Later on this afternoon on the show I do with Patrick Young, me out, JC. We've talked a little bit about this Russ Callaway promotion. Please tell me that Billy Napier is at least going to put some responsibility on Callaway's plate. Give him some veto power, gives him some game management duties. Because if Billy Napier just goes into this year, and he's going to call his own plays again, it appears. If he just thinks it's going to change, that scares me to death. Do you think there's going to be at least some responsibilities that Callaway is going to help with Napier, or is it just a perfunctory?
Terry Shane would be probably more versed at this question than I would be. But having looked at it, Billy Napier was, in Billy Napier's mind, in my opinion, as well or misinformed as it may be, Billy Napier was always going to be the guy that called plays and was hired in his mind because of him calling plays. Yeah. That's why he's here. Oh, no, he was here because he's an administrator. He's a great organizer. He's been hired for that. Bullshit. He's here because they thought, meaning Strickland and them, thought that he was going to get the ball in the end zone. That's why he's here. And that he would be able to recruit players, just like he did at Louisiana, to Florida. Whether you want to call that organization or administration, I don't care. Great. I know Mark Long and Edgar Thompson. These guys talk about this all the time, and they're right with everything they say. But in my heart of hearts, it is all about the idea that Scott Strickland loved this guy because of the fact that they thought, or everybody thought, it would bring a dynamic, offensive brand of football to this school. And that's yet to happen, in my opinion. Now, with DJ Lagway coming in as quarterback, he is Billy Napier's last chance. And if DJ stays healthy and they pull off some wins and they do it in an exciting way of playing, then everybody can take a deep breath and say, all right, you know what? We're going to probably end up extending Billy Napier. So that's what we have here, because that's what's going to happen. So get ready. If they win 10 games or if they do something special and DJ Lagway is the guy, you will see Billy Napier get extended. They will extend him just like Wisconsin extended Luke Fickell because of the way things work today in college football. It is so transient, and it goes
really
from A to B to C to D overnight. They do this to try to keep stability, but it wasn't very long ago. In fact, it was less than a year ago that we were trying to run a guy out of here and trying to figure out, do we have the money to pay him off? That's not long ago.
I'll stick by my guns. I screamed as loud as anybody. They should have fired him. I said, well, if they don't fire him, the only way I would accept not firing him after the debacle in the first half of the season, if he fired himself up the ladder. And I thought he would fire himself. You know what I mean by that? Fire himself, bringing a guy. He did. My concern is this, a couple concerns, and I get it. Lagway may not have been 100% healthy the last half of the season. He was pretty healthy. So put that aside. If you go back and look at those 4 games that they won at the end, the offense didn't do much, man.
The defense picked it up.
The offense did not. If you go back and just Ole Miss, you just held your breath. They barely missed on a couple of game winners.
No, that LSU game, Terry, you're exactly right.
LSU ran 92 plays. Florida ran 42. Stunk it up in Tallahassee on offense. They had a 65-yard run in the fourth quarter. It wasn't a blowout game. And then the bowl game was a mess.
Well, maybe Russ has got some ideas, and in order to do that, Russ needed a little bit of promotion. I don't really know the dynamic. I don't care. You know what, Terry? I don't care either, because What I care about is whether or not they win football games to get the ball in the end zone. Just get the damn ball in the end zone. Good quarterbacks do two things. They get the ball in the end zone and they win football games. I don't need anything else. That's it. It's as simple as that to me in my world. And that's, if Russ is going to become the offensive coordinator in title and that's going to help Billy get the ball in the end zone, I'm all good with it. But you're right about the offense, my man. That bowl game was awful, and the Florida State game was awful, and but they won. And defensively, we saw a different Gator football team. All those sacks against LSU, are you kidding me? They allowed as many sacks in that game as they had all season.
All year, yeah.
Think about that. The dominance of the Florida defense in that game was the old Gators. And yes, you're right. They were on the field 2/3 of the time, but they didn't lose. And then they beat Mississippi. Mississippi with the great Jackson Dart, the great Lane Kiffin, who some people wanted to be the coach here. Comes down here. You think they were happy with the way their year ended? Hell no. They weren't happy. They weren't happy at all.
Another concern is you just don't want to look up, and Lagway he'll be here 3 years. This is his second year. He'll have to stick around another year. He'll be a 3-and-done guy. You just hope after 3 years, Lagway's career doesn't go the way of Emmitt Smith. Poor Emmitt came at Florida in a bad time. Emmitt played 3 years in Gainesville. Florida was perpetually 7-4, right? You just hope Lagway doesn't get wasted as well. 3 years from now, they top out at 8 wins, and you go, man, they had Lagway.
Well, Rob disagrees with me. He says, wrong, you're wrong, Johnny. We had a great offensive coordinator, and he was fired. Did we? Billy was brought here for recruiting and running a well-organized football operation. No, dude. If you don't win games, I don't care how good your organization is. Organization doesn't mean squat. Steve Spurrier had about 30 people around him. He didn't have 130 people around him. I don't know. Maybe Scott Strickland is, and maybe you're right about that. But it was about winning football. It's always about winning football games. I don't want to hear about the organization. Who the hell cares if they have 130 people over there on the payroll? It's called bloated. In fact, in this day and age today, we're trying to cut things. So I don't think Rob and I can disagree on that one. But thank you for watching, Rob. We love you.
Hey, when people talk about, I want the program to be good stewards and good culture and all, I use this all the time, JC. When people say, winning's great, but I want Florida to represent, or my favorite school to represent, blah, blah, blah. And I always use this. I say, okay, your bitter rival. You're playing your bitter rival.
Yes.
And you're down 2. You're down 2 with 2 seconds left. It's the last play of the game. You are in range for a 46-yard field goal.
Yes.
Now, this is your bitter rival, okay?
Yeah.
And you've got 2 place kickers. One's a distance guy, and one's a accurate guy, but he's not great, over 40. But he's an all-American academic guy and Rhodes Scholar and sugar and spice. The guy's been in a little trouble here, right? He's got a big leg.
Yeah.
What are you running out there? You're running the guy that's probably going to make that kick.
That's what you're going to do. It's really, it's
win
really
games, baby. Win games.
That's all I care. That's all anybody cares about. Recruiting. Okay, recruiting's great. Did anybody talk about any recruiting on February the 3rd? Did we even mention it on February the 3rd? Did it even come up? No. Yes, it's called transfer portal. It's called NIL. And yes, you can recruit from high school and develop players, but that happens in December. And Billy wasn't hired to bring in a bunch of players in December. He was hired to get the team practiced up in December so they could play a January bowl game. That's why he was hired. I don't want to hear about, he was hired so he can recruit kids in December. That's baloney. He was hired to win freaking football games in January. He's a 500 coach right now. That's about what it is.
A couple more minutes and we'll get out of here. Thanks for letting me mess around here and fill in for Shane. I've enjoyed it. I always enjoy y'all's show.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.
I really enjoy it. Y'all done a super job and grown this thing immensely on with Freddie Weeby. You and I won't talk again most likely until Florida will have made their trip tomorrow to Athens. Gators get out of there with a win, right?
Absolutely. Get out of there with a win, but don't take it lightly. And remember that second half in the LSU game. They had to come from behind. Maybe you get in a position where you don't have to come from behind. Yeah. But I think they match up very well against Georgia's team Offensively, Georgia is challenged because of the way they play, in my opinion, and that's because of who their coach is. And I think Georgia is much better at home, but I think Florida can beat you anyway. They can beat you on the moon. They can beat you anywhere. And Florida wins this game by 8 points. And I don't know if that's enough to cover, but that'll be good enough for me. And just get back to the O'Connell Center.
And I hate to see Georgia a couple of years ago, they had Anthony Edwards. He didn't have any help. This Asa Newell kid, the 5-star that Mike White brought in, he's a real nice player. Got very little help around him. Last thing, we'll get out of here.
All right,
it looks like ESPN College Basketball Game Day will be in Gainesville. That's a big deal for this program.
I think it is.
The only negative I hate is game day is in the morning. What gets done at noon? The game tips off at 8:30. Man, I hate that.
That is, you're so right about that. That is just very inconvenient for these kids. But these kids, what else they got to do, right? They got to go to game day, then head over to University Avenue, get going and get cranked up, and then come back and raise living hell on Saturday night.
What about a 60-year-old like me? I have trouble staying up that late.
A 60-year-old. You're only 60. 60 is just the number, Terry. It's just a number.
By the way, I just and Jason, we'll get out of here on this. I just celebrated one of those damnable birthdays like a week ago.
Oh,
and I renamed it. There's a new number. I turned 60. 60. 60. That's my story.
You stay with that. Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M. Big week coming up. Love it. Everybody should be damn excited because this team is the real deal. So let's roll.
Buddy, thank you. I'm available anytime you need anything. You know that in Jacksonville. And special thanks to Zach Rothrock as well for making it all happen. That'll wrap it up. Terry Norvelle in for Shane Matthews. Had a great time. Hope you enjoyed it. PodUp with Matthews in the morning.